Elisha at Dothan. This story tells us something about Elisha and the kind of man he was. At this time, the king of Aram was at war with Israel. Aram was close to Israel, and the king kept sending raiding parties into Israel to attack and to steal. But whenever he would send his troops out, the Israelites would be ready for them and could drive them away. When this had happened several times, the king called for his officials. He was obviously angry and suspected that there was a spy amongst them who was working for Israel. He demanded to know which of them was on Israel's side. Then one of the officials told him that there was a man in Israel, Elisha, who even knew what the king said in the privacy of his own bedroom. So the king gave orders to send a company of soldiers to find him, capture him, and bring him back to the king. Now Elisha was staying in the city of Dothan with his servant. One morning the servant got up and went out. He came back in, trembling with the news that the city was surrounded by a small army of soldiers and chariots. He was afraid and wanted to know what they should do. But Elisha wasn't bothered in the least. He prayed that God would open his servant's eyes to see a vast army of heavenly soldiers in chariots of fire above the hills surrounding the city. The army on the side of Elisha was far greater than Aram's army. It was God's army. Next, Elisha prayed to the Lord to blind the eyes of the enemy's army, which of course he did. Elisha went to meet them and told them that he would guide them to the man they were looking for. He led them to Samaria, the capital city, where the king of Israel lived. And now Elisha asked God to open the blind men's eyes. Oh, we can imagine how these soldiers must have felt to see that they were inside Samaria, a strong city with a vast army of soldiers at hand. They must have thought it was the end for them, especially when the king asked Elisha if he should have them all killed. But no. Instead, Elisha told the king to give them food and drink. After the enemy army had feasted, Elisha sent them home. Wow! Who would have expected such mercy and kindness when they had come to capture Elisha? And you know, the king of Aram was so impressed by this act of mercy that he stopped sending raiding parties into Israel. God's way is best. We see here the kind of man Elisha was, a real and true man of God. Elisha knew God to be a God of mercy and kindness, and we know he is also a God of grace. Elisha was completely willing to forgive these soldiers, and God is willing to forgive us. That's why he sent his son. All he asks of us is to believe and trust him and to live his way, just like Elisha did.
For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. Luke 19, verse 10.